Good morning, everybody. My name is Darren St. George. I am here because we are doing our virtual road trip with Sal St. George, of course, to the Museum of John Wayne. We are very excited for this today. We've been looking forward to it, and we have a lot to learn. So let's get into it right away. Let's have Sal come online. Come on, Sal. Are you there with us?
Good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody as usual. And I want to get started right away. I want to move right into this. Darren, can we have the first slide up there just for everybody to take a peek?
Boom.
We're going to Iowa, and we're going to visit the John Wayne Birthplace and Museum. If we can go to slide number 2. And you're going to see this is where we're going right now. We're going to head right inside. And Darren, let's take them in there and meet Brian Downs, Wayne Davis, and they are going to give us a guided tour through the John Wayne Birthplace Museum. Here we go.
Morning, Sal. Good morning, Darren. Yes, my name is Brian Downs. I'm the director of the John Wayne Birthplace Museum. So I'll give you a very brief background on how this place came to be. During John Wayne's lifetime, there was little to no interest in his actual birthplace. He was so popular, we kind of took him for granted. But then at his passing, there was a great deal of curiosity about where did he come from. And we always are very grateful to his parents for selecting Winterset, Iowa as the place of his birth, because this is the most all-American town you could possibly imagine in this part of the country. Our courthouse was built in 1876, and to give that little time frame, General Custer was still alive. America was at 100 years old. We have buildings around the courthouse square that are very similar to the point where if John Wayne's family were to come back today, they'd know exactly where they are. Very little has changed. So in 1982, more or less due to popular demand, the John Wayne Birthplace Home was located. And it's a cottage really, a small 4-room house. And it's as original as could be. It has original floors, it has original woodwork. And I think it's very telling for the John Wayne story that such great things can come from small places. Then because of the demand and the visitorship, the fans always wanted more. They demanded more, and we couldn't handle more than about a dozen people at a time in the little house. So plans were developed to establish a John Wayne Birthplace Museum. We're on the opposite corner of the Birthplace Home, a block from downtown, and there was John Wayne had a centennial birthday party here in 2007, and that's where I was introduced. In fact, I invited myself, and Wayne here was one of the first people I met, and we just had so much fun. We had, I think they talk about 10,000 people in town. I don't know because I was out at the fairgrounds presenting a Wild West show, but there were parades, there was every kind of celebration, movies, anything you can imagine related to John Wayne.
Hey, Brian,
Yes.
I want to just interrupt you for a second. How long have you been with the museum now?
I arrived here 13 years ago this spring. I worked for the Chicago Tribune for my entire adult life up till then, 35 years. And during that time, I made it my business to meet John Wayne, get acquainted with him, and I wound up spending the day with him at his home. So after the centennial celebration in 2007, it was about 2 months after that I was invited by the board of directors to come out and interview for a job as director, mainly in charge of seeking funds to get the museum built.
So you actually met John Wayne?
I spent the entire day at his home with him, so I had a pretty good front row seat for the character man.
Can you give us a thumbnail description and what kind of man was he?
Well, he was large, as you could imagine. His home for a movie star of his magnitude was relatively modest. It was a nice bayfront home. He was very intimidating for the first 5-10 minutes or so, and then that melted away instantly, and he was just another guy who got his start in Iowa.
Why was he intimidating? Was it because of his size?
No, because of who he was. Because of
okay.
his reputation. He was my idol since I was a little boy. And here I was. It was like sitting down and having a chat with God or something like that, you can imagine. And I was about 24 years old at the time. And like all smart people, he was very curious, and he asked me as many questions about my life as I did with him. And we discussed everything. The local political scene of the day, I think it was 1977. So the country, as now, there was a lot of upheaval at that time. And he just very opinionated guy. He spoke his mind. You never questioned what he thought about anything. He was very direct, but also very warm and very sincere and hospitable. He would interrupt me if I would ask a stupid question. He would call me out on a stupid question, saying, "You haven't done much research." He said, "You've done a lot of celebrity interviews." I said, "No, sir, you're the first." So I guess he admired my sand, but at the same time, he knew he was going to have to take charge of the situation.
All right, Brian, could we take a little trip into your museum?
Certainly we can. We're starting out here, even though it doesn't look anything like Iowa. This is Monument Valley, Arizona. It's an Indian reservation on the Arizona-Utah border, and it's the spot where John Wayne became a major star in 1939 Stagecoach. And so I just let Wayne follow me around. All right, John Wayne is best known, of course, for his roles in his Western pictures. He said one time he never considered himself a hero, but he played heroes better than anyone else. And he said, I played the man I always wanted to be. In this case, we see a selection of items from his
I think Wayne is going to have to get a little bit closer to you because we can't hear you.
Yeah, Wayne, make sure, I suspect as you're holding the camera, make sure you're not over the microphone.
Okay.
There we go.
Here's a selection of items from Wayne's.
Hang on. You got it? Okay.
Here's a selection of costume, we'd say wardrobe in the movie business. Some little westerns down like a vest, pants, and shirt over here from Big Jake. A coat and hat from Rio Bravo, I'm sorry. A shirt from the shootist, from the shootist. Another shirt here with the buttons up the front. That would be from the man who shot Liberty Valance. And of course, a saddle from the Cowboys. So that's a very good sampling of anything you'd want to see. And people just kind of really linger at this exhibit. It's very special to them.
Brian, we're getting a question. People are asking, where are you located in Iowa?
Winterset, Iowa, very close to the intersection of Interstates 80 and 35, and about 30 minutes from Des Moines when the stoplights are right.
Okay.
All right, but we're small town America. What do we got, Wayne? About 10,000 people in the county, and
Would you tell everybody who your demographic is?
Our age groups, and I mean everybody. We get there is no, we can't figure Americans. That's our demographic, and foreign visitors, of course. But people come from absolutely every place. This is the only museum in the world dedicated to John Wayne. So other than a few movie locations out west and Ireland, there's really not much. There's nowhere people can go to savor and absorb the life and career of John Wayne. This is it.
And you said you had an international audience?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we get them year round. We get Japanese, Australians, Irish, Germans, South Americans. We have an annual John Wayne birthday celebration every year, and we have a fellow that comes in from Spain for this event. We have a great deal of trouble communicating with him, but he sure has a good time.
Okay.
But no,
I see a lot of firearms behind you.
All right, that is. These are commemorative firearms. They're dedicated. It's a company called America Remembers, and there's shotguns, Winchesters, revolvers. There's even a Tommy gun at the bottom, all dedicated to John Wayne. And they're collectibles. They're tribute pieces. A company in Virginia called America Remembers. Almost everything you see here, the smaller pieces in the case, they came from the collection of Joseph Zuxworth, who is the president of our John Wayne Birthplace Board, and he'd been collecting John Wayne for about 40 years. He lives in Pennsylvania, and he wanted so much to be a part of this that he made an offer that couldn't be refused, and just giving us his 40 years of collection here. And wardrobes, movie posters, tickets, with so much. I mean, you name it.
Now, I'm sure this is a very simple question. John Wayne's real name, and how did he get the nickname Duke?
His real name at birth and at death was Marion Robert Morrison. Some people will tell you Mitchell Morrison, some will say Michael, but we have the documents. It was always Marion Robert Morrison. He didn't like the name Marion, which was a little rare as a boy's name when he was growing up. So when he went to Hollywood, his earliest roles, he would be billed as Duke Morrison in tiny little forgettable pictures. But then a role came up in The Big Trail, the lead, and the producer said, we need a more American-sounding masculine name, and they came up with John Wayne quite quickly. And he liked it. He said, it works for me.
So the name Duke, was it true that it was named after a dog?
That's quite true. Yeah, he was on his way to school every day. He'd pass the firehouse with his Airedale dog, and the fireman kind of befriended the boy and the dog. He said, here comes Big Duke and Little Duke. And so young Marion much preferred Duke to Marion. He embraced it.
What do you have behind you?
In 2013, after years of trying, we invited Maureen O'Hara, Duke's famous co-star, to join us for the John Wayne birthday celebration. And she came here and spent 4 days and was in no hurry to leave. This case commemorates that visit. We had more than our share of groundbreakings here and a couple of slow starts called false starts. So we had, I think, a total of 3 groundbreakings, but this one was authentic. And Maureen came and we had the shovel engraved with her name and Aisa Wayne's name. And we had a dinner at a warehouse in our town because there was no other facility. And we had 900 people paid $150 for dinner with Maureen O'Hara. And I think that breaks all winter set attendance records, certainly for price paid for a ticket. But she was here and she had a ball, and she met anybody who wanted to meet her, had an opportunity to. She made time for absolutely everybody.
You know
so
what?
She made 5 movies with John Wayne.
That's correct. Yes. Rio Grande, The Quiet Man, Wings of Eagles. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Big Jake. I'm so embarrassed.
McClintock.
McClintock.
Yes.
Gee, oh.
Can't forget that one.
You got it. Thank you.
Let's take this opportunity, speaking of Maureen O'Hara, and launch that poll. We were asking, we would like to know for everybody watching, who is your favorite John Wayne collaborator? And of course, we have Maureen O'Hara, we have Walter Brennan, Ward Bond, and also the director John Ford. So just out of curiosity, we're talking about Maureen O'Hara, and she has some quick votes. All right. If you're on Facebook, again, please vote if you prefer Maureen O'Hara, Walter Brennan, Ward Bond, or John Ford. And
Ward Bond made quite a few movies with him, didn't he?
And the fellow that surpasses him would be, I'm camera shy.
It looks like Maureen O'Hara is getting the lion's share right now. Ward Bond, despite having that many movies, he's not getting too many votes.
Right.
And
you know what it is? Ward Bond always had bit parts, and he blended into the movie. He had integral parts. They were important parts. But they knew each other for, I think it was 30 years. And they made, I think, 22 movies together. Walter Brennan, I have a soft spot for him because I loved him in Rio Bravo.
Yeah, I agree. That's what stands out to me. And I think we have some winners here. At 9%, we have Ward Bond. And then at 19%, we share second place between Walter Brennan and John Ford. And then, of course, Maureen O'Hara is in first place with 53% of the votes. So,
all right, let's go back to Brian.
Yep.
Okay, that name I was groping for was Paul Fix. He was a character actor. I believe he holds the record for the most appearances in John Wayne pictures. And in fact, early on it was John Wayne in Paul Fix movies. So, but I think he surpasses Ward Bond. But Ward Bond was much more well known. Now, you asked John Wayne at different times in his life what's his favorite picture, and he would give different movies for different reasons. At one time, he said The Quiet Man because it was the most fun. He said that She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, the cavalry picture, he said that was his best acting. Then about 1970, he had his hands down. He had to select True Grit, because of course he got the Academy Award for that one. But as often as not, he would say, "What's your favorite picture, Duke?" He'd say, "My next one," because the man just really loved his work. So over here is a case dedicated to True Grit, which needed a case of its own. We'll find some wardrobe pieces here. The shirt and jacket and pants in here he wore in the role of Rooster Cogburn. Here's a very famous Harry Jackson sculpture that was commissioned for a Time magazine cover, because around the time of True Grit, Wayne enjoyed a brand new surge in popularity. And it was just, it went right through the roof all over again. It was like he was starting out all over. And we have an eye patch in the case that was worn in the movie. And we say an eye patch rather than the eye patch, because as explained in the letter here, Wayne insisted on having a new patch every day because he was worried about infection, about dirt, and he would inspect it every day to make sure there are no traces of makeup from the day before. There's also gauze that's painted black over the patch where you can truthfully see out of it, because if you're not accustomed to working with one eye, it's hard to ride and shoot. These are, this is a movie mug, and we have a big selection of those in the case over here. But since starting in the late 1940s, Wayne would pass out a movie mug to absolutely everybody who worked on his picture, be they a driver, be they makeup people, electricians, sound people, caterers, everybody got one. And that was just done, and they become highly collectible items in subsequent.
Brian, how did you accrue all of these memorabilia? How did it come about?
The pieces in the case are overwhelmingly from the collection of Joe Zeuxwert, who's the president of the board of directors of the John Wayne Birthplace. And this is a collection he had. And when we built the museum, prior to Joe coming on board, we really didn't know. Of course, he came on around shortly before me, but he promised the collection early on. All we had to do was build a facility for it. But there's not a single piece in this entire facility that was purchased by the organization. Everything was donated, or it's on long-term loan.
Excellent. It looks like you have a lot of costumes behind you.
Yes, we do. This one is we call it the non-Western exhibit, because Wayne, of course, best known for the Western roles. He also did pictures like the Green Berets. Here's the officer's coat he wore in that picture. A jacket from Hatari. A suit from Big Jim McLean, not a well-known picture, but he and Jim Arness were chasing communists in that movie in the early 50s. A beret from the Green Berets, not his. And down here is the helmet from the movie The Hellfighters, where he played Red Adair, where he ran around the world putting out fires, literally, oil rig fires and what have you. So,
fun movie.
Fun. Now, our latest edition was sent to us by John Wayne's daughter, Aisa Wayne, who's on our board of directors. This is John Wayne's personal bookcase. It's a massive piece, and we just did it. Wayne became a reader at quite a young age, and when he was a kid, he'd spend many hours in the Glendale Library reading classics, reading about heroes from history.
So that was his bookcase?
This was a bookcase, and considering the amount of books he had, we have to say this was one of his bookcases. This was from, I believe, from his den. In fact, there's a picture of Wayne standing here in front of the bookcase with a TV on the spot. But he would read. He had at an auction several years ago, his entire book collection was offered for sale, and the variety of his favorites was just amazing.
Well, they're all John Wayne books.
Yeah, I don't think he ever got to read any of those.
Do you know what kind of books he would like, what he read?
He liked biography. He was very big on biography. He liked to read about historical figures. He was a major fan of Winston Churchill. John Wayne had an idol in his lifetime that would be Winston Churchill. In the Scott Iman book we talked about before, it was revealed that John Wayne's favorite movie star, who impressed him the most, was Oliver Hardy from Laurel and Hardy. He was just in awe of him. And whenever they were they did a play together, and they did a movie called The Fighting Kentuckian. And when they were together, Wayne would just basically sit at his feet and listen to him tell stories. He just adored the man. And he would tell
a lot of people don't realize that Oliver Hardy made a movie, excuse me, with John Wayne.
The Fighting Kentuckian. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Ollie
think it was
funny.
made during a time when Stan and Ollie were having difficulties with Hal Roach, and
Yes.
they were having contract problems. And Oliver continued working while Stan put himself in isolation until Oliver's contract expired, so that they could both work together under one contract.
Yeah, and that was kind of a dirty trick. He got them cheaper by separating them, but it worked. So he did have to freelance a little bit. When I say freelance, I mean working without Stan, but not especially memorable pictures. But he did it. Man's he had great appetites as far as racetracks, and well, we're here for John Wayne. That's another story. Oliver Hardy's.
I like Oliver Hardy stories too, and to be honest with you, he holds his own in that movie very well, and he could have been a great character actor if he had stepped away from the team for a while.
He could have, yes, but we'll always love them together. You can hardly have one without the other.
Because you don't really see the Oliver Hardy from Laurel and Hardy in that movie. He does play a character.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, he was John Wayne's partner in his surveying team, and they got caught up in a war down in Louisiana. Great picture.
Okay, let's move on.
All right. Here's a I'm sorry, we missed the movie mugs. We showed you one before. And here's a great sampling of the gift mugs that Wayne would give away. We have Blood Alley, the Conqueror, the Alamo, the Cowboys, Cahill, U.S. Marshal, McHugh, Brannigan, and Rooster Cogburn. Let's say, very collectible.
So he would make these up for the entire crew?
He would. He had a company in Southern California near his home that would make the mugs, and he'd have this. I'm sure the secretary had a big hand in this, collecting the names of everybody, and then they were engraved with the signature on the back. Good luck, John Wayne, and with the name of the individual. And these are very treasured. The only time you see them come on the market is if somebody passed away and the kids want to break up the collection of their mother or father.
Wow, that's really nice.
And now this was interesting. They had a major donor from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who also had an art museum in Milwaukee. And he had a home in Florida, and he loved to visit art galleries. So he was in the Miami Art Gallery and saw this hand-signed Andy Warhol print of John Wayne. And he said, what's the price on that? He said, $95,000. And so they wrapped it up, shipped him. He said, send it to the John Wayne birthplace. And so when he handed them the check, they looked at the check. It was only $75,000, but they accepted that. I guess that's how rich people get rich. Never pay full price. Now, I don't know how this can turn up on the camera, but we have some gorgeous panels here, 6 of them, that were set decorations from the movie The Shootist. They were a visitor to our museum is quite literally standing on the spot where John Wayne filmed the last scene of his last movie, of course, in a studio. The set designer was a fellow named Robert Boyle, who was in Hollywood as long as John Wayne was. And he kept these from the movie, and he had them in his home. He moved into assisted living, so his daughter called us to want to know if we'd like them for the museum. And of course, we never say no to anybody. So now they anchor they give the room so much of its beauty that they're our main gallery here. But
do you have any information on that? I mean, that was his last movie,
The Shootist.
And how was I know he populated the film with some of his friends, Lauren Bacall, Jimmy Stewart, Ronnie Howard at that time, Ron Howard, Richard Boone. How was his health when he was doing it? Was he able to keep up with the movie?
It was not. A lot of people will tell you that he knew his cancer had returned. That is absolutely false. He was suffering from respiratory issues during the filming of that movie, which was released in 1976. And the cancer was not. Well, I saw him in 77, and he was healthy as a horse. He was quite large, looked like he was struggling with his weight, but he had great complexion, no sign of pain, no nothing. So when he made The Shootist, he did not know he had cancer, but he was suffering from respiratory problems, bronchitis, and worse, where they had to shut down the picture for several days.
Okay, thank you.
Now, everybody imagines John Wayne on a horse, and John Wayne, while he admired and respected horses, he did not love horses. And when he was away from the cameras, he headed to his yacht, the Wild Goose. As a young fellow in high school, Wayne had dreams of being a naval officer. In fact, it applied to Annapolis, but the appointment did not come through. So when he became wealthy and comfortable, he bought a surplus U.S. Navy minesweeper. The Wild Goose is 136 feet long, and it's outfitted in a very masculine style. The model that we have here was built by a Coast Guardsman, and it was intended as a gift for John Wayne's den. But building model ships is very tedious work, and he didn't have it finished in time, so that's how we acquired it. Over here, someone came one time to the museum when we were at the old building and said, "This is John Wayne's fishing hat." I said, "Thank you," and I put it in a drawer, not knowing who he was or anything of it. So we took a picture of it and sent it to Wayne's daughter, Aisa, and said, "Can you identify this hat?" She said, "Well, that's my dad's fishing hat." Well, that's good enough for us. Wow. And of course, the flag, the Wild Goose emblem on the flag, that was only flown while the owner was on board, I should say. The ship had a captain and a crew of about 7 people, but this flag would go up when Wayne was on board. Of course, we have a life ring, life vest, and a rotating series of pictures of John Wayne's life on the boat.
Brian, is the Wild Goose now a tourist attraction in Florida? I mean, in California?
It's in Newport Beach, very close to, it's within eyesight of the site of Wayne's home in Newport Beach. And you can tour the boat at anchor or in its berth, or you can take a dinner cruise on the boat around the harbor. It's capable of going to sea, but it's not licensed to go to sea with paying passengers yet because it's just too old. And that's it's available for anybody. Just buy a ticket. I've been on there a number of times. It's quite nice.
Now you have an automobile behind you.
This is a 1972 Grand Safari station wagon, and it was John Wayne he was very, very fond of Pontiacs. It's certainly not a movie star car, and he would order one of these every 2 years or so. This is one of 3, and he had the roof raised on theirs to accommodate his size. He didn't have to twist and turn. In fact, we can show you how much a man 6'4" can get in and out of the car much easier this way than trying to get into it. Because he was a big fellow, and it would be a little difficult, like us trying to get into a Camaro. But it's a real relic. It was owned by Foster Dennis, bought it from the family, and Foster worked for a paving company he still owns in California. He got it from the family, and he said, "The car is ours when we can provide a roof for it," which we did. The car, we drove it in here, and then the car was basically embalmed. All the fluids were taken out. Everything was disconnected. So it would take some doing to get it running again, but it's a real beauty.
And it's huge.
It looks it. Even even here, it looks pretty large. It's amazing that was his personal car. When I saw it from a distance, I thought it was from one of his motion pictures.
Nope, that was his personal car in California. He would drive it out to Arizona every Thanksgiving to his ranch for the livestock sale. His ranch was an important part of his life. And the police in Newport Beach were noted for giving him a pass because by everybody's account, he was a terrible driver. He didn't understand things like traffic lights and lane changes and things like that. And when he got on the open road, just as far as the pedal would go, and invariably when he was stopped, he was given a pass for some reason or other. He must have known someone. Now, a very important part, maybe Wayne's most important period in his career, arguably could be said 1948 and 1949, because it was during those years he developed into the character that became the beloved John Wayne for the next 30 years. Those movies were Fort Apache, or She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, Sands of Iwo Jima, and Red River. And they were all They were just within a couple of years apart from each other. This case focuses on the cavalry. Pants and shirt from she wore a yellow ribbon, a cavalry hat from Rio Lobo, and this fine figure of a sculpture by Jesse Cosart of John Wayne as a cavalryman. And just like I say, very important. In fact, he was in his 40s playing a man 20 years older, and she wore a yellow ribbon. It was really a magnificent, stirring picture. One of the great lines was there, the Indians were stirred up against the cavalry, and Wayne goes into the Indian camp, and he and the old chief agreed that young men start wars and old men must stop them. A very poignant picture. And it just really gave us the idea of what the cavalryman was all about. In fact, General MacArthur, during Wayne's time, he said, "You represent the Frontier Army better than the Frontier Army did," and that was quite a compliment.
Hey, Brian, can you give us a little background about his relationship with John Ford?
Yes, he never hesitated to point out that he owed John Ford everything his entire career. Wayne, he took Wayne, he knew Wayne since the silent movie days. Wayne had bit parts in a couple of his pictures, but Ford never used him in a starring role until 1939, Stagecoach. He was following him very closely, and Ford was cranky, but he was also a genius. And I think to a lot of people, especially myself, he gave us a great vision of what America was all about. Because Ford filmed pictures going from colonial days right up until modern urban politics, and so many magnificent pictures. I can't name a stinker in the bunch, and you can't say that for very many people. He was the most decorated film director of all time. 4 Academy Awards for feature films and 2 for documentaries. And nobody's touched that from that time till this. And to say Wayne was probably afraid of him. He had great affection for him. It was very much a father-son relationship. But say he would take away the John Ford and John Wayne pictures, and I dare say that John Wayne might have been Randolph Scott. He just didn't have those classics to anchor his career on. And they were major, and same could be said for Ford. Ford would not be remembered today if it wasn't for the Wayne pictures. And that's open to anybody can disagree with that. That's not a problem, but that's just my personal take on it. And I said one time to Maureen O'Hara and separately to Harry Carey Jr., who were very close to Duke, I said, "Could you have John Wayne without John Ford or vice versa?" They both said absolutely not. And they had a front row seat for the whole thing. Does that answer the question?
Oh, yeah.
You know what? Let's cut in here, and you can keep talking, but let's launch that poll and see everybody's favorite movie of the Dukes. The options that we have today are Stagecoach, The Quiet Man, Rio Bravo, True Grit, or The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. What is your favorite movie of the Dukes? Wow. Okay, everything has votes. Everything. Instantly. Everything is starting to get some votes. A few are taking precedence. We have The Quiet Man, True Grit, and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. But it's pretty close. This is really impressive. And Dad, I already know you're going to be surprised where Rio Bravo is falling in all of this. Okay. I think we have a consensus. A couple more votes are popping in, but I think we have a verdict. All right, let's take a look. In last place is Rio Bravo with 4. Ouch. It fell even further. I was about to say with 4%. No, it now has fallen to 3% of the vote. In second place is Stagecoach with 10%. Third place is The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance with 24. Second place goes to The Quiet Man, 28%, and True Grit wins with 34%. Wow, that's interesting.
You can't be wrong. It's your favorite or it's not.
Yeah. And I urge everybody to revisit Rio Bravo.
Me too.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about John Wayne and High Noon?
Well, he didn't like the picture. He called it I won't use the exact words, but he did call it a commie picture. He said the townspeople abandoning the sheriff in their time of need. He didn't like the script writer. It was in the blacklisting days, and Wayne was very active in that for America First Ideals, and that's where he earned a lot of hostility from the press during that period. That's where it began. Before that, he was just a popular movie star. But he liked to say, nobody likes my pictures but the public. So as far as High Noon goes, he said he wanted nothing to do with it. And he thought that, I do believe he presented Gary Cooper with the Oscar or accepted on Cooper's behalf. Something. Don't hold me to that one, but he did. He accepted that, but his answer to High Noon was to make Rio Bravo. Now, do we have time to show you a very important piece in our collection?
Absolutely.
All right. With The Quiet Man getting so many votes, we have to share that this is the original, authentic, one and only horse cart used in the Ireland scenes of The Quiet Man. It's in the very beginning of the picture where John Wayne steps off the train and takes the ride to Innisfree, and it's there practically. Well, it's throughout. The courtship scenes all happen on there. John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara both set themselves on this cart at different times in the picture. But it is virtually the opening scene to the closing scene. And how we got this, Maureen O'Hara was a very good friend to the John Wayne birthplace. And near the end of her life, I was visiting her home, and she was frail, and she was on a walker, and she wanted to go out to her garage.
Was where was she living at that point?
In Boise, Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
She had been living in Ireland, but her family was in Idaho, and at that age, they thought they needed to have her close by. So went out to her garage, and she was right behind me on her walker. And when I saw this car, I had to go something like that because I recognized it for what it was. And she knew our plans for the museum, and she looked me very seriously and held up her finger, and she goes, "Not yet." So after she was here, after she passed away, I should say, her son said, "Come and get the cart." Her grandson, I should say, I said, "Come and get the cart." So it was a prized relic. And one of our bigger pieces up there with the automobile. And we were hesitant at first, but I was very careful. We took a lot of close-up photographs of it. And since The Quiet Man came out on Blu-ray, it was so easy to see every little bit of pinstriping, every bit of customized work. This probably dates back to 1880 or so, and it was an antique when it was in the movie. And then the movie took place in the 1920s, when these were common all over Ireland. But these little pieces here, this is what we saw. You can blow up in the movie and freeze frame, and everything matches identically. Because we can't just take something similar.
How did Maureen acquire this?
Well, I don't know did she buy it? Was it gifted to her, or did she steal it? But it's a hard thing to steal. But she had a 30-acre estate in Ireland, and her grandson remembers as a little boy playing on this. The cushions were long gone. Some Irish mouse finished those off. So we had new cushions with Irish tweed put on it. And then also in the movie, you will see that she wears a shawl, and it's quite a few scenes. And this shawl was on her chair in the bedroom where she died. And grandson remembered when he was a little boy in the wintertime in their damp home in Ireland, being wrapped up in this. It was purchased by Maureen's mother in Dublin as a kind of a good luck piece to film The Quiet Man. And Ford saw the shawl, and he just used it throughout. In fact, when the train comes into the station, you'll see a woman wearing the shawl. Maureen wears it and models it in a little film we have. And it was just a great treasure of hers for her entire life.
Well, apparently it sounds as if Maureen O'Hara had an affection to the items that she used in movies. Did John Wayne have that kind of sentimentality? Was he known to keep props?
I think not. His collection of movie wardrobe at his home, I could tell, was auctioned several years ago by Heritage. I just don't think it would fit in his home, all those pieces. It was work. Maureen said they weren't sentimental. She told me that we didn't keep things, but she obviously did, because I did see her warehouse, and it was as big as this room and back to the ceiling. So she told a little matey up on that one, because she kept just about everything. Wayne, I think not so much. It was a job. They said to me one time, "Did you save your typewriter from your days at the paper?" I said, "No, I didn't. I didn't think that much of it." So it was their job. They said they just don't remember it like the fans did. They're not so sentimentally attached.
Yeah. Well, it's understandable. They were making so many movies. It was going from one movie to the next movie to the next movie. I can see it. I can see why they didn't feel it. It was almost disposable at that point.
Well, it was. They said it was work. It wasn't fun. It looks fun on the screen, but making movies is hard work.
Yeah.
And they didn't get the salaries that stars get today. But I think they're going to. Well, you think John Wayne has gone 41 years now. Who in Hollywood has that kind of reputation that long after his passing? His family's shocked. John Wayne would have been shocked. Something I would like to add is that Issa Wayne was here ago and she was being interviewed by local television. And she said, my father always knew his value to the studios. He always knew his box office power. But she said, never in his lifetime did he know how much he was loved. And I thought that was rather poignant.
Can you tell us a little bit more about his children or his wife?
Well, they've all been, all the children have been to the John Wayne birthplace, mostly before it was built. He was married to 3 women, all Latins. He had a notion that Latin women were a little more subservient and obedient, and he found out that wasn't the case. But he loved his time south of the border, and he liked the ladies he met down there as well. So he was madly in love with the first wife. Was her parents were in the diplomat service in Los Angeles, and they had his first 4 children with her. The second wife, no children, and the last wife, who was still living, they had 3 children together.
And she's been here.
She has been here.
Darren, can you put up slide number 3 for me? This is, I surprised Brian and Wayne earlier. This is in Brooklyn, New York. It's the PS 380 John Wayne Elementary School. In 1982, they dedicated the school to the memory of John Wayne. On the left that you're looking at is I think it's a 38-foot mural that was created by an artist in New York and installed there. Brian, maybe you can tell me a little bit of how you feel the world is today in terms of John Wayne's name.
I think there's a longing by Americans for a days gone by and the values and traditions that Wayne represented. Absolutely nobody represented them better than he did. He was an unabashed patriot. He was outspoken. And I think in this time where we're so careful in what we say, I think that a lot of people find that refreshing. It's said he never, ever saw himself as a hero. He considered himself a fine actor who played heroes. And he played the man he wanted to be. I suppose that could be said for anybody in the acting business.
Darren, can we see Brian, please? Oh, thank you. Continue.
Okay. He was he grew up, everything he had, he worked very hard for. When the very little family lived in the little house in the little town of Winterset, there were nothing special. There were only 2 people who even remembered them at that time at Wayne's passing. And they didn't leave a mark here or any of the other Iowa towns they lived in. Wayne did not. He made a mark for himself in athletics and scholarship. Earned a football scholarship, was injured, lost the scholarship, and realized at a young age he had to go to work. And he slaved in a lot of movies. There were something called 10-day wonders. Those old black and white pictures that play now where all the plots seem to be the same. But he worked, he persevered, he learned his craft. He loved the movie business, and he loved America for the opportunities that it provided.
Didn't he do a TV special all about America?
America, he did a record called America, Why I Love Her. It was an album with choirs and orchestras, and then he did Swing Out Sweet Land. And he was the host of an all-star cast of, it was a long program. I can't remember, it was well over an hour, but watch it now, there's very few people, like with the exception of Van Margaret, who's even still with us. They're all in their prime.
We're losing you.
Do you want to I think you must have hit the mute button. I can see that your microphone just went on mute for a moment.
By the way, that school that we were looking at was brought to my attention by one of our guests. Larry Parker is one of our guests, and he was the one that called me up and told me all about the school that his brother, Jerome, was instrumental in putting it all together. So thank you, Larry. Much appreciated for that little tidbit. You even surprised the people at the museum because they had never heard of the John Wayne School in Brooklyn, New York. Okay, let's go back.
Can you hear us?
There we go.
I can hear you now.
Okay. Good.
So your feelings about the criticisms that are being targeted on John Wayne right now?
Well, truthfully, Wayne and I have discussed this quite a bit. And my personal feeling is it's very cowardly to pick on someone's remarks who hasn't been around for decades to defend himself. I knew John Wayne to be a man who spoke his mind. He was not always polite. He could be brash, but never can anyone point to a single instance where he mistreated anybody of color or anyone else that, let's say he was an equal opportunity tough guy. I mean, he was hard on people he worked with. He didn't create roles for blacks just to create roles for blacks. And guess what? Neither did anybody else in Hollywood in those days. It had a purpose to it. But I think it's so easy to throw the term racist around it. To me, it indicates a very small vocabulary, and it's just too easy to insult or to try and take down. For small people to try and take down someone else's good name, especially if they're not here to defend themselves. They're just going to have to. I think, like Wayne said, nobody likes my pictures but the public, and same might be said of Wayne himself. The public obviously adores him. They're not affected by any of this nonsense. Wayne, give us your thoughts on that, because you've given it a lot of thought.
Well, the interesting thing seems to be that all of these little bits that they take out of the interview, which is very long, as most of the Playboy interviews were, are little bits taken out of context. And they say where he says, I believe in white supremacy. And he says, I don't think we should turn over control of things to people who are not responsible. For folks that weren't around in 1971, you got to remember there were race riots going on. You had Black Panthers that were going into courtrooms, kidnapping and shooting judges. There was a lot of that kind of stuff going on. Saying that I think that people need to be responsible before we let them control things. I don't think that's an unreasonable statement at all.
Thank you so much. I know you have we always recommend books, and I just want to take an opportunity now to show a couple of books, and I know they're in your gift shop, and we're going to send out your email address, your website address, so if people want to pick them up. Here's the first book that we're recommending. It's John Wayne, The Life and Legend. Here it is. You said you like this book, Brian?
It's outstanding. It's the most human telling of John Wayne's story imaginable. And there's some other fine biographies, but this one just took it all a step further.
Okay. And the others are really put out by the family, and I'm really enjoying these. These are all cookbooks taken from family archives. They have all kinds of recipes. This is the John Wayne Family Cookbook. And then there's the John Wayne Way to Barbecue Cookbook. And finally, we have the John Wayne Cast Iron Cookbook. All great recipes. And I'll be honest with you, I've tried them myself. And I did a program at one of the local libraries, and we used only John Wayne recipes. And the audience went nuts over them. They really enjoyed all the dishes. Okay. Any final words, Brian, Wayne?
We urge everybody. We are situated Interstates 80 and 35. Interstate 80 goes from New York to San Francisco, so it's not possible to drive across the country without coming in spitting distance of the John Wayne Birthplace Museum. Same can be said for Interstate 35, which goes from Texas almost to Canada. So if you're on the road, please come here. Plan on perhaps attending one of our John Wayne birthday celebrations every May, Memorial Day weekend. And if you can't do, we're working on an expansion of our museum. We're going to double this exhibit area because for all the compliments we get on TripAdvisor, they politely also say they wish it was bigger, not as a criticism, but just a desire to see more. And we definitely have more. So we're going to double this building, this room that we're standing in now is going to be duplicated on the east side of our building. So yes, please come and I guess this is what we tell. This is how we tell the rest of the country what we think of John Wayne out here in the heartland. He's very much loved and admired.
And when they come down, besides the museum, they're able to visit the home.
They will visit the Birthplace Home. It's a tiny cottage, 4-bedroom home where the 13-pound Marion Robert Morrison was born in 1907. They can also visit the impressive bronze statue at our front door. And we also have an item called a Freedom Rock. A local folk artist paints rocks, and his goal is to have a rock in every one of Iowa's 99 counties. Very patriotic theme with John Wayne movie roles on it, and also local military heroes. And of course, we're also the home of the famous covered bridges in Madison County. We can't forget that.
Well, Wayne, Brian, thank you so much for giving us this wonderful opportunity to see the John Wayne Birthplace and Museum. And yeah, we hope if you get a larger venue, if you start building it up, let's come back again and we'll see what you've done to it.
All right, boys. Thank you very much.
Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's wrap this up and get started with our outro. While I'm talking about things to come, we're already looking ahead. August is around the corner, and we would like to know your vote. Who should Sal be lecturing about next? Let's take a look. We have options if you want to click into the poll: Carol Burnett, Goldie Hawn, Joan Rivers, Phyllis Diller, and Bette Midler. And as we saw earlier, everyone has votes from the start. And holy cow, this is really going fast. I don't have a winner. It keeps bouncing between Carol Burnett, Bette Midler, Joan Rivers. They're all taking the lead at one time or another. We may have a consensus, and it looks like okay. Without getting too fine a point, the numbers are really close. Goldie Hawn and Phyllis Diller at the back end. Then we have Joan Rivers in second place, and then here we go. We have Bette Midler in second place, and then taking the lead, Carol Burnett. We want more Carol Burnett. So maybe in August, that's what we're going to have to look forward to.
So it's Carol Burnett and Bette Midler?
Carol Burnett, Bette Midler, and Joan Rivers, but they're all close. We're talking about 17%, 20%, and then Carol Burnett is 40%. So
Carol Burnett definitely takes the lead.
She does take that one. Once again, we today was our virtual field trip to the John Wayne Birthplace and Museum. You can visit them online at johnwaynebirthplace.museum. Lots of more information there. Also, while you're there, check out their gift shop and all of the books that Dad was mentioning. You can find there lots of cookbooks as well. Here's the cast iron that we were talking about. Please visit us over on Facebook. You can keep up with all of our events and things that are going on. Also, you can go to salstgeorge.com, and that is our most up-to-date list of events that we have. Today, we had the John Wayne Museum. Last week, we had Jackie Gleason. And next week, we are very excited for Billy Crystal. We've already been getting a lot of news about Billy Crystal. Everybody's excited for that one. So I hope you can join us. Once again, thank you so much to Brian and Wayne. Dad, as always, it's a pleasure and fun. And
nice job, son.
Thank you. You too. We look forward to seeing everyone again next week. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.